4.1, agenda additions and approval. Craig, do you have anything?
There are none from administration, Mr. Chair.
Okay. If there's nothing else from the floor, I would entertain a motion to approve. Board Member Gano moves that we approve the agenda as presented. Call the question. All in favor? And passed. We have someone online for DP 4.1. We'll do quick introductions. Michelle, starting with you.
Michelle Hoover, Legislative Assistant.
Larry Clark, Board Member.
Alan Gano, Board Member.
Reed Hunter, Ward 2, Big Valley.
Justin Stevens, good morning.
Janet Adam, Board Member.
Press the big one more time. Yeah, should be good now.
Greg Teal, Director of Planning and Development.
Mr. Richard, Director of Municipal Services.
All right, now we have DP 25097, Bar W Resort. Craig, you'll be presenting, I assume?
I will, Mr. Chair. Given that this is the first development permit many of you have seen, Mr. Chair, probably just it's going to take a little longer than our usual presentations, so you're aware. And I'll probably try to fill in a little bit of the gaps on the concept and the process, just so you're able to catch up, and then we'll get into the meat of the development permit. So the package that you're seeing for item number 4.1 is very typical of what you would see from the department when we have what's called a discretionary use. So discretionary use is any permit that, as it suggests, involves judgment and a determination whether or not that use is appropriate on the site. And process-wise, all of those discretionary uses always come to Municipal Planning Commission for approval. To get here, staff have probably spent a bit of time with the applicant to answer any questions and get their application to a point where it usually meets most of our expectations or requirements under our land use bylaw or other planning documents that may be applicable. And that is presented in a report that you're seeing. This one's a little bit longer than a typical one for, say, a house or a garage, given that we're up against the lake and we have more plans and policies to review against. But staff will do up an assessment or analysis of the proposed development, starting first with a bit of description, typically with a bit of description of the land, and then go into the regulations that apply and how the application stacks up against that. And then at the very back of the report, you'll always have a recommendation from us on what to do with the application and how to make a decision on it. And we communicate that through a draft development permit, so that you can see if you go with the staff recommendation, you'll see exactly what's going to go out the other end as the approval document to the applicant. It's always, just to point out that at the very end of the report, there's always options available to the Municipal Planning Commission. And they range from going with the staff recommendations as presented to debating amongst yourselves around the table to modify or adjust that. Or if the majority of the group thinks that, no, this is a case where this particular use just doesn't fit that site, it could go to a refusal. I'll let you know now, for those that are new, there is nothing magical about how many permits we approve versus refuse in a given year. The vast majority of our applications, if they make it to this stage, are typically with the support of administration, which means they've either modified the proposal or there's one or two little things that are being considered on a case-by-case basis. But the vast majority of the time, you will see recommendations for approval with conditions. And there's nothing, that doesn't mean that the system's broken and not working. It just means that applicants have adjusted to either meet our rules or we're able to accommodate or relax rules if necessary to accommodate a proposed site or proposed type of development. So that's the, staff are always available to, once your Municipal Planning Commission agenda comes out, you do get that typically on Fridays or a meeting on Monday. But we do ask that you kind of save up your questions for when we actually get into the meeting, which usually is after the staff presentation. The chair will ask for any questions, or there's always an opportunity to ask those questions in that format before you go into a voting scenario. So with that, Mr. Chair, I'm going to walk us into development permit 25097. The applicant is RW Resorts, and Mr. Keith Wilson on behalf of the company is here with us via Zoom today, and he may have some questions after I've done a brief presentation. The proposal is to add a 6,000 square foot area for a 18-hole mini golf at the Bar W Resort, which is up on the south shore of Buffalo Lake, just on the north side of Bayview Street, and west of 20-4 Range Road. The proposal does fit with the recreational facility designation that's on the property. So it does accommodate, that particular zoning does accommodate what we call a recreational facility -outdoor. And in the report, you can see the definition of what that is. And that's usually one of the first steps that staff will always do, is screen the proposed development and how the applicant has described the use and activity that they want to do against our definitions in our land use bylaw to see if it's a use that's on the list that council said will be considered for the site. And in this particular case, our assessment is, yes, it does fit that use definition. So now we can move on to the next step, which is, do we have any concerns or issues, or how does it stack up against the standards? So if we could scroll down a little bit, Andrew, as we go. Just a little bit more about the description of the, maybe just, yeah, on the photos is fine. The 18-hole mini golf would be to the immediate east of the shop, and on your photo you can see that the top photo. That's the grayish wood trim building that's on the left-hand side of that photo, and in that graveled area, kind of between the trees and the shrubs that are in the foreground, that's the area that we're looking at for the 6,000 square foot that would be the 18-hole mini golf. It would include a attendance shack somewhere between it, probably a 10-foot by 10-foot building, and not having a great height of less than 14 to 16 feet. Roughly speaking, to the left of the shrub of the spruce tree behind the boulder that you can see on the top photo. A perimeter fence would go around the 6,000 square foot area, and that is anticipated to be chain link with privacy slats in it, both as a windbreak and as a visual screen for neighboring properties. And then inside would be the various structures that form the 18-hole course as you go through. The shack I was mentioning would be where you check in to go play mini golf and pick up your equipment and your clubs. The intent is for the mini golf to be accessible to the broad general public. So it's not exclusive to the 318 leaseholders that's attached to the larger RV site or campground that's on the site. So that means any general member of the public, be it from White Sands or Ocean Sands, our communities, could pop in and pay and go do a round of mini golf. So that will come up a little bit in our assessment of how we deal with the traffic and the parking issues. So if we scroll a little further down, we're going to get into some of those issues. So just a couple more photos that Andrew's showing you about the layout of the land. So this is looking a little bit to the north, almost pivoting along the south edge of the site. So it would extend on the far right. In that middle picture, you see the edge of the existing gravel area, and you see that again on the lower picture, an existing gravel area. And the proposal is also to expand that as necessary to accommodate 15 to 20 parking stalls. The site globally, in that overall permit that approved the recreational vehicle park, does have a fair amount of visitor parking. And right now, given the level of leases, it's probably in excess. So there may be a need to expand this slightly, but it's easily accommodated in this on property. When you move on to section 3, again, this is a little bit different from other permits that you'll see in reports, given that we have a number of other plans. Because we get close to the lake, we have arrangements with our neighboring municipalities and agreements, especially under the Buffalo Lake Intermunicipal Development Plan. So we've had to screen this proposal to see if it fits everything under that plan, and our assessment is yes, it does. Similarly, we do the same thing with our own municipal development plan. And then again, building on that commitment to the other neighbors in our growth node that we've been assigned on the south shore of the lake, we have the South Shore Area Structure Plan that makes a bunch of commitments on how the county would manage various development type proposals and changes of use in several quarter sections that span from this site on the east all the way to Old McDonald on the west. So it's a relatively large growth study or growth area. So we do screen against those proposals in our assessment of proposed use is that it meets those policies. That plan spends a bit of time talking about historical resources, and that was previously addressed as part of the earlier development a few years ago for the overall Bar W resort, in which case the historical approval has already been granted. Historical approvals is a good example of an interaction we have with a provincial department where they've changed their name. It used to be, I think they're down to Alberta Culture and Tourism now. And they regulate any activities that disturb archaeological or paleontological resources. So sometimes they will ask for studies and scan and additional work on a property. Other times they'll just give you a standard clearance that says if you happen to be digging and you find something that's interesting, you have the obligation to stop and report, and we'll take it from there. And that's the scenario that they've given for this overall development. That's very common, and by the way, so that same answer will come up a lot around the lake, given its historic use by Métis Nation and others in the area. So having gone through that, we then get into the land use file, and I mentioned the definition of the use does fit. That's great. We can move on from that onto page 6 in the PDF, Andrew. We start getting into some of the standards that would apply. So first up is, where is it on the site? How does it fit our yard and site requirements? So probably our biggest that you're going to see, it's very common for outside of our multi-lot subdivisions, is the 125-foot setback from the center line of any of our range roads or county or township roads. So that's intended to deal with issues of dust control and also snow accumulation. So both in terms of dealing with complaints about someone having a cloud of dust basically pushing the house further back from that. That's why we have that setback. If you're wondering about the 125 feet. In this particular case, based on the site plan that's been given, there's probably a need for a little bit of adjustment, but there seems to be enough space to shuffle the south boundary of the mini golf location a little bit to the north to line up with the front edge of the shop. And then it would meet that setback distance of 125 feet from Bayview Street. So Bayview being a gravel road is also subject to that setback distance. So that means we're using the south as the front yard. And we would also, even though it's on a kind of a side yard, when we go to the east on Township Road Range Road 20-4, we would still have 125 feet, but there's lots of space to the east, so it's well in excess of the 125-foot setback. The rear yard would be towards the lake. Again, lots of space, way more than the 25 feet that we'd be looking for. And similar to the west, there's lots of space, more than the 25 feet that we'd be looking for to the edge of the property. So it says it's about 600 meters farther off to the west. Another standard we look at is the height of the structures in the buildings. So we're expecting the attendance shack to be in that 12 to 14 foot height range. And given the status of the principal use, they would have up to 32 feet of space to work with. The individual structures, so I can't speak to whether or not there's going to be like a little bit of a tower or some sort of interesting feature as you go through the mini golf structure. That too would be expected to stay within that 32 foot height requirement. But that's a lot of space for those kind of, I guess, visually interesting things to make the course itself a bit interesting and a bit of a challenge. In terms of overall site coverage, we do have to add this particular use, 6,000 square feet, to what we've already been approved across the entire site. So with the 318 stall, our recreational vehicle park, and the various buildings and amenities that went with that first development permit, that accounted for about 33% of the overall coverage. It's a very large site. And that's why the numbers look a little funny at 6,000 square foot. We're adding less than 0.2% of additional coverage, but we still have to go through the exercise. We have a budget, so to speak, of up to 45% coverage, and we're well within that. The next phase of development, as more things get added over time, will gradually start eating up that 45%. The recreational facility district doesn't specify any architectural design guidelines, so we're not looking for any colors or themes in that particular aspect. The resort has started being developed with, I'm not sure I'm going to do it justice in describing it. Mr. Wilson probably may want to add more to it or correct it. Western Ranch theme is what's shaping up. So the traditional T access out of wood going into the facility, heavy emphasis on wood trim and front porch on the store, and the same kind of theme is proposed to be carried into the shack and to the mini golf as well. Parking stalls, I mentioned, would be one of our key considerations. So this use, for all intent and purposes, has to stand on its own. You're not able to access the rest of the RV area past the store to the west. That's a controlled access area for the use of the leases of the RV sites. So the parking has to be outside of that gate and relatively close to the facility that people are going to use. So that's where that 15 to 20 stalls that we mentioned that's shown on the site plan comes in. And we're confident that that would meet the requirements or the needs. And there's lots of other parking stalls from the previous approval that would also cover any additional if we're off by a few. This does bring up one area where we're asking for a relaxation of our usual rules. In the recreational facility district and the general requirements for parking for those kind of uses, our expectation is a hard surface, pavement, concrete, or something like that, not gravel. So the recommendation from staff is giving that we gave a relaxation for the overall RV campsite to have gravel. The roads leading to the site to date are still gravel. We're recommending that that requirement for hard surfacing be set aside and allow the 15 to 20 parking stalls associated with this use to also be gravel, similar to the other parking areas on the site. Stormwater management close to the lake is a concern in terms of what happens with water quality going off the site, especially going into the lake. As part of the previous development, 3 storm ponds were created, and this particular site would feed to one that's down below the escarpment and would have to be modified, but for the time being, there's enough natural area for the water to be managed and run off until it can reach that facility. The final item that's flagged in the staff report, and again, Mr. Wilson may want to speak to this as well, is a question about what's happening on traffic and any traffic-related impacts off-site. So that could be just the volume of traffic on the road, or given that we have gravel roads leading to this area, the issue of increasing dust and concerns about dust clouds for traffic coming and going. So there's a couple perspectives administration has looked at for this particular one. Number one, we're not sure it's a high traffic generator to begin with 18 holes, and some of the people that are coming to the site may be already there because they're users of the RV site, or they may be next door in Bayview Estates or White Sands. I think Mr. Wilson's pointed out some of them may actually take advantage of our temporary pilot project golf cart bylaw that allows them to drive golf carts to reach the facility. So we aren't particularly concerned about the amount of increased traffic coming from the mini golf per se, even if it is open to the broad public. And in part, that's because the traffic impact assessment we did for the overall development had very substantial traffic generation numbers that we were able to consider when we dealt with that development permit. And it assumed that there would be a rapid buildup and filling of 318 RV stalls. And without casting shade on what's happening with the resort, it's just not panning out to be that way as anticipated by the engineer who did the traffic assessment. What that means is that we have space to add additional traffic before we encounter any other real problems on the traffic front. The other perspective is we've already tried to address all the traffic generation issues, and there's very few tools left for us to apply. So what I mean by that is when we did the development permit for the 318 RV stalls, we entered into a development agreement with the developer based on their traffic impact assessment and their anticipated traffic to make improvements to intersections at Township Road 40-2 and Highway 835. So there may be some short-term intersection improvements that had to be in place by the time all 318 RV sites were filled. So we have a development agreement, a contract for the developer to make contributions for that. We also have a development agreement that says, in the context of our overall traffic study that we did for that area and looking at a paved road alternative that may connect up from Highway 601, which is a very substantial capital project that would start with at least 2 miles of land acquisition and some more detailed design. The development agreement for the initial development calls for cash contributions for their share of the anticipated cost of that project, which start kicking in, I think, in another 3 years. So we've already applied the future pavement requirement. As an interim, we already have dust control and the cost for that being passed on to the resort. So that road use agreements that we have for that would also cover this particular use. And that includes, I think it's calcium we're putting out.
Magnesium chloride.
So it is purposely flexible so we can change over time, so we don't have to get in that level of detail specifics of a development permit. For this particular use though, the dust control on the routes that people are supposed to be using to come and go to Bar W, which is basically Township Road 40-2 off 835 and up 20-4 on the east side, are already covered in the dust control measures that we have in place through road use agreements. And finally, when the RV site was approved, the Land and Property Rights Tribunal on appeal put in the requirement for us to have the control gate that's operated on a seasonal basis on Bayview Street. So what that means is come May, we close the gate, which means you can't go west from the west side of Bar W. So all their traffic has to use that alternative route of, if they're coming up 835, of 40-2 and up 20-4. And then in October, at the end of the season, we open it up. And the same kind of cycle of traffic, probably it's a May to October activity, which when we see the peak, would apply to the mini golf. So they have to use the same route as the RV site users, and we already have that covered between the development agreements and the road use agreements. So that covers all the technical issues for this particular application, Mr. Chair. I just want to, again, in the course of going slow, I just want to still explain that our recommendation is for approval, and to see exactly what that would look like, we would start scrolling to page 9 of the PDF document, and you can see what one of our typical development permits look like, but minus the big draft. If based on the decision of the MPC, we of course would take that off and make any other adjustments, and then this is the document that largely goes out to the applicants. So you see, as we try to describe which land we're dealing with, what kind of key documents we're informing the nature of the development. So we're trying to get a good record of what exactly are we approving. Conditional approval is very common. Right after that, listing for any variances. And again, there is one variance. The relaxation is another term for variance that we're asking the commission to consider to allow gravel parking instead of paved parking. And then we're into other conditions to make sure that the way what we get on the land, the development, is as we expected. So part of that includes following your plans in the application. You build what you described to us. That's basically what number 1 says. Number 2 is to clarify that we're not interested really in regulating what hole 3 or hole 5 or hole 7 in the course actually looks like over time. And when you think about this over the next 20 to 25 years if approved, there may be periodic adjustments just to mix that up or change it. So we're trying to make it very clear that that activity, so long as you haven't expanded the size and you added 9 more holes, for example, you're still operating within your approval. You don't have to come back and get permission to change up hole number 4 if you want to change it a couple years down the road. So that's the intent of condition number 2. Condition number 3 goes to our assessment of that setback, that front yard requirement, 125 feet. They're close, but it's basically a hand-drawn map that attaches a site plan. So when you go to put in your fence post, which will define your edge of that south boundary of the mini golf area, there's a chance to do the final measurement and there's space to push it back. So that's why we're not recommending a relaxation or reduction of that requirement, because there's ample space to be able to meet the expectation. The last one is, again, going to the traffic issue and making sure that we get those patterns that we anticipate that match up the RV. And that's putting a time of operation, an annual operation requirement, saying that it's open from April 30th to October 16th. And we expect to be closed as of October 16th or not open until after March 31. So that keeps it as a seasonal, which starts matching up the traffic pattern for the rest. So attached to that, you'll also find the site plans that I've referenced several times, but for the sake of not padding our agenda, whenever you're looking at a report, you may have to jump to the very end of the draft development agreement to see the attached site plan. Andrew's rotated it for you, so on the screen. So north is to the top on this one, and you can see the layout of some of the items that I've been talking about. So the first layout, the small rectangle, is the shack for the golf clubs, and the next large rectangle is a 6,000 square foot fenced area for the mini golf, and then the parking off to the east, and then a trail connection to take people from the parking to the front entrance of the course. You can scroll to the next one, Andrew. You may have to rotate this one full 180. Thank you. No, the shack should be in the lower left. So Yeah, there we go. Okay. So north again is now at the top of the page. And this is within that 6,000 square foot box that was on the other drawing. This is what's anticipated to be happening in terms of the general layout of plywood or other structures to create a course where probably gravel pathways and some landscaping. So with that, Mr. Chair, the recommendation is for approval of development permit 25097 with the relaxation recommended by staff and the conditions attached to the draft development permit.
I have one clarification question. So, mini golf is open to the public, so that is now the store and mini golf that would be open. Is that correct?
Correct. Yeah, both facilities would be outside of the control gate, which is to the west of the store.
And then the remainder would be the developer's discretion, who he allows to utilize.
Well, I guess any business has the ability to choose who they wish to serve.
That's fine. I just wanted to make sure that I understood correctly on the store side. Is there any other questions or comments from the board?
What about bathrooms?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So the bathrooms are already, and again, Keith may have to help me out with, Mr. Wilson may wish to speak as well, Mr. Chair, already available at the store building. So.
You are still muted right now, Keith.
Hi,
There you
everybody. Great job, Craig. You did good. A further thought is I think we should put a bathroom behind the little shed in that area, just so people don't have to go as far to the store and then just use the store as overflow, if that would be acceptable. Good question, though.
I was also wondering what's the height of the fence? And if any idea what height the highest structure would be inside the mini golf?
I guess we're thinking the highest structure would be a windmill, and I think we could just, because we're going with that farm theme, the 32 feet would be acceptable. And the fence bouncing back and forth, I had initially talked to Craig about chain link with the windscreen, but just because we're going for that farm theme, we may go to something more wood if that was okay, acceptable, and probably staying in that 6 to 7 feet. Just, and the biggest reason was just for those windy days.
I just thought up to 32 feet, that's getting pretty high.
Yeah, that's why. Yeah, the only thing we needed high was hopefully a windmill.
Yeah. Okay. That's all I got.
Is there anything else you'd like to add, Mr. Wilson?
No, Craig nailed it. The only thing was that 125 foot offset with us having that walk path to keep people off the road. I think everything should work according to plan.
So based on go ahead.
Just another question on that, back to administration, is with an addition of another bathroom, is that part of this permit, or what would happen with that then?
They'll probably go to the fence too, Mr. Chair. I would suggest that for sake of clarity, if you're willing to look at that site plan and say the applicant has the ability to add probably would help if Keith gave us some numbers about the size of the building in terms of its footprint. We could add that as a condition or a modification to this particular permit.
If the board will allow, I think I have no problem with changing the height of the fence a foot or two or adding a bathroom. If the board's all right with it, we could just add the condition to the development officer's satisfaction. Then it gives the applicant and Craig a little bit of room to discuss and approve it without bringing it back. I don't want to get too down in the weeds on this one.
And I guess for the bathroom, they've got those new portable ones. You've probably seen them, Justin. We've got a couple on site, so we wouldn't build a building. We just buy one of those portable ones and make it operational, teed into our existing.
Good. Yeah. Any other questions from the board?
Start date? When would you start this project?
I guess just because of the bad road bands, we try to get some gravel and whatnot moved in pre-spring and then try to start early in spring as possible.
Finish date?
We hope to be open sometime in June. Everything went well?
That's all for me.
Well, there's
I'll make the motion to move it forward with staff recommendations and the additional.
the amendment to the bathroom and the final fencing design to the development officer's satisfaction.
Are you willing to give me a little bit of editorial license on the wording of that condition, and that'll show in the minutes?
I have no issues with that. Any other questions? Well, call it. All in favor? And carried. All right.
Thanks, everybody. Have a great day.
Thank you. Moving on to reports. 5.1, referral from Lacombe County. Craig?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So this is, again, I'm going to give a little bit of background. So from time to time, our neighbors around our overall perimeter, when they're doing certain types of subdivision applications or development applications or changing their own policies or plans, will send what we call an intermunicipal referral. So they'll send it over to us for comment, and if we were doing something similar on our side of the line with Lacombe County, for example, we'd be expected to do the same. So our current policy for those referrals is that staff may initially look at them, but they come to Municipal Planning Commission to basically give the formal response back on behalf of the county. Sometimes they come with a 21-day timeline, and our MPC meeting dates don't always line up. So occasionally you might see one of these lining at the council table, and that's more of the question of the issue of the deadline that we have to our neighbors to get something back to them. So you'll always see a staff report or some advice on how to treat these. They are our neighbor asking for advice or thoughts on a proposed change on how it may impact us and our planning efforts. It's not a question of what we would do in their place. It's here's what we're doing, and do you see any concerns or issues on how you guys plan to deal with the land on your side of the line? That's the best way to think about whenever you see these. So we don't have to do a full analysis like the other ones. We just have to say, okay, do we see anything that has a potential negative impact on us and our planning efforts? For example, they're planning to build a road, and we're planning to build a road just 20 meters further up, so the intersections won't line up. That's not necessarily a good thing. So those kind of comments we may go back. How they choose to run their planning process is sometimes very different than what we would do for our planning process. So that's probably the biggest thing to remember when you're looking at these intermunicipal referrals. It's not what you would do, it's does it have any impact on us? And if the answer is it doesn't, then that's kind of the answer that goes back. So that, if we could scroll down, Andrew, to the very colorful drawing, I'm just going to briefly explain what's going on for those that are, sorry, yeah, I guess that's colorful too. So that's a location map, just to give you your bearings. If you want to go back to that for a second. The big star in the box, we're notorious for cutting off our maps. So the minute we get our municipal boundaries, so this is the Lacombe side of our shared boundary line, and we're all the white to the right-hand side of the red box with the star. And in all fairness, our maps would do the same. So that's our shared road up the right-hand side of that red box, and that road is within the county of Stettler's jurisdiction and control. So if we can scroll to the next one now, and we'll actually skip the surveyor's drawing, and we'll go to the colorful one if you can. Okay, so the red box we're looking at encompasses both the yellow and pink that you see up on the screen. Our shared road is on the right-hand side of the pink. That's township or Range Road 20-22-0. Sorry. And what is happening in the application is the yellow is getting a narrow strip called a panhandle that you can see running along the south side of the pink box, going all the way to the east to get to Range Road 22-0. To give it physical and legal access to a public road allowance. Right now, it doesn't have one. It has undeveloped road allowances to the west, but nothing to the north and south. And that means it's taking a bit of land out of the quarter section that the pink box is in to offset that. They're also giving a similar strip to the pink box. So its boundary is sliding a little bit to the west to basically offset the panhandle that was given to the quarter section to the west. So it's basically two quarter sections that are being subdivided, and then two strips are being reassigned to the two quarter sections. We've had a chance to look at the existing access on 22-0, and one that does exist, looks like it was a well-built lease access many years ago. Doesn't raise any issues for site control or distance for us, so administration does not have any concerns with the proposed subdivision, and the recommendation is to send that back in correspondence to the county prior to their stated deadline, which I believe is at the end of this week. Sorry, my mistake. So I think I have to about another week, November 21st, to get that letter back to them. Be happy to field any questions, Mr. Chair.
Questions or concerns from the floor? Would you be willing to move this? So the motion would be along the lines of instructing staff to notify Lacombe County that we have no concerns. It's a referral, so it's not a plan or that we're approving.
I make the motion that administration instruct Lacombe that we are fine with the referral.
Just if I can, Mr. Chair, when we give a recommendation, that's usually worded in a way that it can be kind of rephrased and structured into a motion, just so if you're looking for the wording,
Okay.
and the time to help you out. So if that's your,
That administration send written confirmation to Lacombe County that the County of Stettler has no concerns with the proposed subdivision application.
I will call the question. All in favor? And carried. Our next meeting is December 3rd at 1 p.m. We only need one final motion. Perfect. All in favor?